Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Had to take a little bit of a time out yesterday. Neighbor down the way on my county road invited me to go hunting, and we sat in the blind. There was actually two blinds. He's on about 20 acres down the road here, and he put me in a blind just before sunup, and then he walked about 100 yards down the way, got in his blind. We sat there for about 3 hours. It was pretty cold. It was in the mid 30s. But I've been looking forward to this hunt. And we saw a bunch of squirrel and crows and stuff like that, but no deer. Then all of a sudden it got really, really quiet. And have you ever had one of those days where you just want to get out in nature? You don't want to be bothered by anybody. You just want to connect with God. And then it's like the record scratches. And somebody shows up. Somebody, not just anybody, not like a spiritual connection type of encounter. More so somebody weird, right? With just this energy. Now, typically when this happens to me, I'm out fishing. And like fish and game will show up. And it's like these people are stalking us. And I remember getting so irritated. I'm like, I'm out here minding my own business. Please don't bother me. I'm trying to find my center, find my balance with the Most High, trying to process some things, whatever the case may be. We've all been there, right? We've all been there. You go out in the wilderness and you talk to God about whatever's going on in your life, whether it be an illness, whether it be emotional stuff, spiritual stuff, and then the record scratches and a fish and game officer comes up asking you for your license or something else weird like what happened to us yesterday. What happened yesterday? Well, as I said, we're out there in the blind and all of a sudden it got real quiet. So my buddy texted me and he's like, hey, well, I'm coming out of my blind and I think we're done. And we walk up to his truck and sitting literally 50 yards away from us is a brand new Jeep Rubicon. Now, for those of you that know about Jeep Rubicons, those cars are like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And it's a real estate agent who drove in good half mile into the property without permission, wanting to sell my neighbor's property. Now, he bought this property long time ago and just uses it for hunting. It's like pristine. It's in its natural state. And it just happens to have a lake view. But he hasn't cleared any trees or anything to open up that view. He just uses it for hunting. So after the fact, we realized that the reason why no deer came out during the last hour we were sitting in the blinds is because the real estate agent spooked them when he drove up. Deer are very sensitive to sound and cars driving and all that stuff. So my neighbor was a little bit irritated, to say the least. But it made me realize something, that this is a sign of the times. And now the new real estate agents of 2023 are essentially like Jehovah's Witness stalkers. They don't wait for someone to sell their land. They essentially bait you or try to trap you or trick you into selling your land. And they'll show up, they'll bring you flowers, they'll remember your birthday, and they spend a lot of time trying to get people to sell these desirable properties, instead of waiting for them to naturally want to sell these properties. Now, I've personally gotten several letters in the mail asking me to sell my property. But of course, I don't have a lake view. But the people that do, they're getting like stalked. Now, if you knew my friend Rick, you would love this guy. He's awesome. He's a little bit hard of hearing, so I have to kind of scream at him. But it's part of the fun. We got out of the truck and he said, now, he goes, we're going to have to whisper. I said, well, if I whisper, you're not going to be able to hear me. So we got out of the truck and I just nodded every time he would whisper at me because I knew that I would have to like scream at him and spook the deer so that he could hear me. But he's the sweetest guy ever. Invited me hunting onto his land, which is literally half a mile from my house on our county road. And I just feel blessed to be able to go out and hunt with him. It's a lot of fun. Now, what's happening out here? Well, we'll get into the rest of today's show. I just want to get on here a little bit early for those of you that showed up. And then we'll get into all the other stuff that we got to talk about today. Lots going on. But so there's a lot of wealthy people who are trying to scoop up these rural properties. And it's a very troubling trend. And most people out here won't sell. They don't want to sell because they know. But then, they just hope that if they continue the pressure and keep, pumping up the money or wait for that person to fall on hard times, that they'll be able to get this land. And so what I'm starting to see around here is this weird mix of uber wealthy people. It's just not a lot, but it's kind of sprinkled in throughout this very rural community. And they're always the ones who never stop to talk. They never engage you. Their windows are super heavily tinted and they just drive by. And it's just weird to me. What are they doing out here? Now, interestingly enough as well, there's quite a few liberals that have kind of moved out here as well, which is just really weird to me because most people are not liberal here. But anyway, so we now have real estate stalkers out here, and the people out here don't mess around. They feel threatened. It's not going to end well. Now, it's been a while since we've done Between the Headlines. So are you guys wondering what's going on in the headlines? Well, there haven't been a lot of headlines until today, have there? Kissinger just died on the 333rd day of the year. But the reason why there haven't been any very profound headlines is because the controllers want you focused on buying things, right? You notice how they always do this right around Christmas time, after Thanksgiving. There isn't a lot going on in the news. Well, and then we have the truce, right? The truce between Hamas Sandwich and the Juice Club. So all of this is meant to give you good feelings and to get you focused on being in a beta state so that you can hit the buy button. It's supposed to give you hope about the future, and so that you go, oh, the world is great. The economy is great. We'll just buy a bunch of stuff and then we'll just pay for it with our tax return. I remember I used to be that guy. Do whatever it takes, any means necessary to make sure all the people in my life got a Christmas gift. And I'm so glad I don't live my life like that anymore. And then, we'll just pay for it all later when we get the tax return. So the controllers know that they can whip you right back out of that state come January 1st, right? With the New Year's resolutions and then another whatever they're going to launch next. Now we got a lot to cover today. As many of you already realized and noticed, Henry Kissinger finally died at 100 years old on the 333rd day of the year. Now, I don't want to make this show about Henry Kissinger because, a lot of people don't even know who he is. He's surpassed many, many generations. Obviously, he's 100 years old, right? But needless to say, he's a very evil man. And it's funny how history tries to paint him with a broad brush of an edgy yet effective person who changed the world. No, the guy there's a lot of things we could say about him, right? So, people, I always wondered, I used to wonder, God, why do evil people get to live to be 100? And then the rest of us are lucky to see 60. Well, it's because these people have some kind of secret, don't they? They know the secret. They won't share it with all of us of how to live a long life. And it could be something stupid or simple that they know about. You ever wonder, like, you look at these, like, movie stars, right? And you look at these, and it's not that they're, like, working out all the time, but you see them in these roles, and they're like, they have a perfectly sculpted body. And you're like, how is that even possible? Like, that's not even normal. And it's because it's not normal. They have some kind of secret. They know the secret. And this is why they live a very long time. It's because they've sold their soul to the devil. The Bible says, my people perish or die because of lack of knowledge. And that's because they've been given the secrets and they've withheld the secrets from us. Now, of course, part of that involves human sacrifice, where they can live a very long time. But there's also health secrets that they know about. And they continue to make money off of us who are all searching for those secrets to health, correct? Or everyone's searching for those secrets to health, and a lot of people just never find it. Now, there used to be a time in history where everybody knew what the secrets to health were. Like, God wasn't going to hang us out to dry. He knows how to maintain a healthy body. He knows the different things in nature that can help us maintain good physical health and clarity of mind and spirit. And so the devil has hidden all of that so he can capitalize on our pain and suffering and our illness and sickness. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these things happen the minute we come out of the womb. Born into this world, and the minute they start sticking you with things, that can spell the beginning of a very long and difficult life for a lot of people. So there's not a lot we can do about that other than look forward to the next life that is promised to us for those of us that stay faithful and endure until the end of all this. And that's pretty much what I have to say about Henry Kissinger. He already had his life. And even though he lasted 100 years and got to live in opulence and decadence and riches, that was his life. And that's what he gets. Now, I'm not here to say we definitely won't see him in the next life, but I can imagine with all the people dying as a result of these people in leadership, I can't imagine God would allow them to get into heaven. So, what else is going on? Well, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. 5G, rejected in elite neighborhoods. We're going to talk about a creepy cosmic ray that was detected, as well as a recent resurgence in rabies. After we had predicted that that was going to happen, well, we didn't predict it. God told us that this was going to be a thing, and we talked about it in faith, and now it's happening. Let's get into some of this stuff. I also have a real life story of a 9-year-old boy who essentially turned into a vampire. We're going to read that story. It's actually a study, a case study. And sometimes you can find these case studies by simply searching, and these things pop up, and you can read about these bizarre incidents that have no other explanation other than something spiritually demonic. So we'll get into that as well today. Good morning, everybody. Thanks to, who is that? That's Felix. Thanks, Felix. Keep up the great work, says Felix. Appreciate that, Felix. Now, let's start with this cosmic ray. Now, I'm not sure what to think about this. Scientists are saying that Earth has been hit with a massive cosmic ray, and they're saying this only happens once in a great while. Now, this is a graphic of it. Obviously, they couldn't see it. They said it was invisible, but they said that their instruments picked up on this and that this rarely happens. It happens like once in decades. But let's read this and just try to figure out what this might mean, okay? Scientists are seeking answers to a new outer space mystery after a telescope in Utah detected the most powerful cosmic ray seen in more than 3 decades. According to the authors of the new research published Thursday in the journal Science, puzzling, extremely rare, ultra-high energy particle is believed to have traveled to Earth from beyond the Milky Way galaxy, although the exact origin of this turbocharged particle from outer space remains a mystery. Some experts have suggested that the cosmic ray, nicknamed the Amaterasu particle after the sun goddess in Japanese mythology, could have been generated by unknown physics. They call this an amazing discovery because they don't know what can produce this high amount of energy. Now, of course, like I said, it was invisible to the naked eye, but they were charged particles that slammed into the earth. Now, my basic thoughts on this are that God controls what's up there, doesn't he? And if there's a rare cosmic wave that truly did hit the earth, then maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's a sign telling us that he is coming soon. We'll have to keep an eye on this, because if we start getting hit with lots of cosmic rays, that would suggest some kind of pattern, wouldn't it? And some kind of frequency. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's get into this post about a rabies outbreak during Thanksgiving. Now, this is weird. One rabid kitten triggered intensive effort to contain deadly virus. This was November 26th this year, just a few days ago. And it says here, let me see, maybe there's some pictures of this. Now, what strikes me as odd about this case, look at the Masonic floor here in the laboratory. What strikes me as odd about this is the intense effort and urgency involved in the reaction to this rabid kitten. They're also going to talk about this rabies pellet program that we exposed a couple years ago. It's now been extended to 16 states. Remember, last time we checked, it was only 13 states. And this is another clue that something is happening that they're not telling us about. Something very, very serious. You're also going to notice in this article that they say that this rabies variant is not supposed to be possible in the location that they found it. Another clue that something is amiss. Let's read this. At first, Madeline Wall thought her new kitten was having a bad reaction to medication for ringworm. After each dose, he would shake his head and flail his legs. She and her husband Rich had brought the kitten to their house in the historic neighborhood of Omaha, Nebraska, after a friend found the stray meowing in the driveway. About 5 weeks old and barely 2 pounds, a cuddly black and white animal looked like he was wearing a tuxedo. She named him Stanley. Stanley then stopped eating, got seizures, and then stopped breathing. Her husband gave the little kitten chest compressions. They rushed him to the vet. They noticed the pupils were different sizes, and they thought it was a parasite at first, and then they tested it for rabies. Now, no one had seen rabies in this area, but the kitten died the next day, and then 48 hours later, it tested positive for rabies. Now, keep a close eye and remember this, because we're going to read a story about a 9-year-old boy that this same thing happened to from a rabies bat. But notice here, the kitten had a strain of raccoon rabies. Remember, raccoon scrambled is corona. Raccoon, corona. There's a connection between these two illnesses, and it had never been detected west of the Appalachian Mountains. How did it pop up 850 miles from where the variant normally circulates in the eastern United States? And how far had it spread? Now, first, this epidemiologist thought it was a mistake. They even sent out the CDC. The mystery sparked a broad emergency response showcasing how disease detectives work to find out the origins of a lethal infection while trying to ensure people don't get sick or die. The stakes were high. If the virus were able to spread unchecked in raccoons, transmission could easily radiate out from Omaha to surrounding areas. because they aren't many large mountain chains, rivers, or deserts in that part of the country to act as natural barriers, Wallace said. CDC estimates that the virus would expand in concentric circles at about 24 miles a year. Over 5 years, the rabies strain will make its way to South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas, putting 7 million residents at increased risks. More than a dozen wildlife biologists drove to Omaha from the 8 states as far away as Vermont and New Hampshire, hauling trailers full of traps, injectable rabies vaccines, gallons of anise oil, and cases of marshmallows to lure, trap, and vaccinate raccoons in hopes of stopping the deadly virus from spreading. CDC scientists set up labs and trailers to test roadkill for the virus. They tracked down 10 people, including the Walls, their friends, and veterinary staffers who had been scratched or bitten by the kitten, so they could receive 4 doses of rabies vaccines and 1 dose of human rabies immune globulin to neutralize the virus. Treatment that could cost up to $8,000 per person. Are you getting the feeling that this response doesn't seem natural for a rabid cat? Are you getting the feeling that maybe they were studying something that they already knew they had released? They seemed so ready, didn't they? Officials also posted queries on social media and volunteers fanning out in neighborhoods to seek information about other sightings of the kitten, possibly litter mates. So they were basically tracking and tracing this kitten and everyone it came in contact with. Like literally contact traced this kitten. We've never had a 9-alarm fire like this, said Richard Chipman, the coordinator of the National Rabies Program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Whoa. Listen to this. Signs of rabies. Rabies is caused by a virus that infects the central nervous system in mammals and is nearly always fatal if untreated. Virus that killed Stanley the kitten is transmitted readily among raccoons, animals that frequent backyards, trash cans, and farm fields, where they have a greater chance of coming into contact with people. People in the United States rarely contract rabies, with only 1 to 3 cases reported annually. But about 60,000 Americans receive post-exposure treatment each year after being bitten or scratched by infected animals. This seems to me like a tinderbox ready to explode, doesn't it? And this is evidenced by articles like this. Rabies vaccine market to reach 1,903 million by 2032. The market will increase. Look at this. They're expecting the market to increase from that to that by 10 years. So they know something, don't they? They wouldn't just increase the market size of the rabies vaccine unless they knew something. Let's keep reading here. More than 90% of reported U.S. rabies cases in animals occur in wildlife, mostly raccoons, skunks, bats, and foxes. Animals with rabies may be aggressive and try to bite, or they may be seen to drool more than normal. Others may act timidly or appear to be tame, move slowly, or allow humans to get close. Unusual behavior for wild animals that also could be a sign of something wrong. Another sign, different size pupils. After Stanley's death, USDA wildlife biologists spent 10 days trapping and vaccinating animals, 753 raccoons, 41 skunks, 4 feral cats, and 1 red fox, in an area about 61 miles around where the kitten was found. To attract the raccoons and not other animals that are not reservoirs for the virus, they baited the traps with anise oil, which smells like black licorice, and marshmallows. Raccoons like the smell and taste of marshmallows, which resembles the chicken egg they like to eat. The state and local officials also placed 18,000 vaccine packs in parks along storm drains, around trees and bushes, and near walking paths in the woods in a 5-mile radius. Why 6,000 plus 6,000 plus 6,000 vaccine packets? 666? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. The oral rabies vaccine baits come in 2-inch sachets, similar to a ketchup packet, and are coated with fish meal to attract the raccoons. As they chew on it, they are bathing their mouth and tonsils with the vaccine, and that starts the immune reaction. Federal officials have been trying to control the spread of rabies in raccoons since the oral vaccine since 1997. USDA drops about 10 million doses of oral rabies vaccine a year from planes and helicopters in a band of 16 states stretching from Maine to Ohio and south to Alabama and Texas. The goal is to stop the spread of raccoon rabies beyond this hot zone. Wow. So, the combined surveillance and vaccination efforts of the CDC, USDA, and state health departments have contributed to a 50% reduction in the number of rabid raccoons in the United States. That is crazy, you guys. So, watch out when you see a raccoon. I wouldn't approach one. I know they look cute and cuddly. I know a lot of people feed them. But if this is the main vector, this is not good, right? You could easily pick this up. Now, this article goes on. I'm not going to read this whole article, but essentially, this is what's going on with this cat. Now, I'm going to get into this case study. It's a little bit troubling for those of you that are for the faint of heart. This is not for the faint of heart. It's about a boy, a 9-year-old boy, who got rabies from a bat. And they found the bat in their bathroom while they were on vacation at an animal reserve up in Quebec. And I believe that this is what is coming. This is the shape of things to come. And as we read through the description of how quickly this boy turned, imagine the horror of his parents and the boy himself. Because what I'm going to read here sounds a lot like some kind of demon possession. Remember, rabies affects the nervous system. And we saw this whole vampire nervous system thing play out in the film I Am Legend with Will Smith, where the whole theme of the movie was a rabies-like virus that affects the nervous system. And we did see what they describe as a fear of water. Remember? In I Am Legend. In the part where he's at the end of the pier and they all come and he almost drives off into the water. And then they use the water to trap him. The dark water, because they put like a trap, a booby trap, to capture Will Smith. So there's this water theme with this as well. And of course we saw it in the new Hunger Games movie, where one of the boys develops rabies and has a fear of water. So all this is coming. It's being programmed. It's not to put you in fear, but you need to be prepared as well. Now, this incident took place, I guess, in Ontario, Canada, or did I say Quebec? And this literally could be the plot of a vampire movie. And I believe this incident holds some clues that link rabies to other bioweapons like Lyme disease. Let me check in with you guys and we'll start reading through this incident. Good morning, everybody. Let this chat catch up. Let's go ahead and delete this comment because that's already done. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. All right, let's get into this. This is crazy, you guys. I couldn't even believe what I was reading. A 9-year-old boy died from rabies encephalitis caused by a rabies virus variant associated with insectivorous bats. The patient was most likely infected in the Laurentide Mountains of western Quebec but neither the patient nor his parents remembered any direct contact with an animal. Diagnosis was made 7 days after the start of symptoms. After examining the most recent case of rabies in North America, it is obvious that rabies followed bat exposure can occur without history of a documented bite. The present case report emphasizes that the general public and medical care providers need better information about the risks associated with exposure to bats. So they give us a little bit of a backdrop of rabies, and then this is the case. In late September 2000, a 9-year-old boy with no significant past medical history complained of pain over the upper third of his left arm associated with a fever of 38 degrees Celsius, and I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. His pain was associated with numbness and progressed over the subsequent three days, radiating to the left wrist, left shoulder, and lateral aspect of his neck. The pain was worse on palpitation with active movement and at night, causing insomnia. 4 days after the onset of symptoms, the patient developed uncontrolled tremors of his left arm, increasing with voluntary movements and stress. The next day, the child presented for medical assessment and was hospitalized. While his pain remained localized over the left arm, the tremor progressed to the right arm in the next 12 hours. And that's the nervous system, okay? Remember, all the nervous system side effects of the poker, the hives, paralysis, facial paralysis, remember all that? It's because it's connected. Let's keep reading here. He also started complaining of a sore throat and difficulty swallowing cold liquids. The subsequent night was complicated by an intense pruritus over the scalp, neck, and torso, with minimal response to this medicine that they gave him. On day 1 after admission, still conscious and oriented, he exhibited bilateral arm beating tremors with coriform and myoclonic movements of the fingers, toes, and calves. So basically, he just started like flexing out. Deep tendon reflexes were symmetrical, and strength and sensory examinations were normal. At that time, an electroencephalogram revealed a diffuse slowing of cerebral activity with rapid dysrhythmia, but no epileptic activity. An electromyogram of the left deltoid muscle and computed tomography of the head were normal. Later that day, the patient developed hydrophobia, which is fear of water, and aerophobia. I think that's fear of air or fear of heights, maybe. I don't know. And he became dysarthric. An evanescent macular rash was noted over the posterior aspect of the neck and back associated with intense pruritus. He became agitated and experienced transient visual hallucinations. He had significant difficulty drinking, but was still able to swallow his saliva. It almost appears to me like they were studying this boy. Like, at what point do you think, okay, there's something not right here? I mean, if you're a medical professional. Let's keep reading here. The following day, the patient developed severe tremor and myoclonus of the face and all extremities, priapism, drooling, pharyngeal spasm, and a feeling of suffocation. He was basically turning into a zombie. He was intubated, heavily sedated, and transferred to a tertiary care facility with a presumptive diagnosis of rabies. Procedures to confirm the diagnosis were undertaken, and human rabies, immune globulin rabies vaccine, and whatever were administered immediately. Now, at this point, it's already too late, because once the rabies virus gets into your nervous system, it's too late because it's impervious to antibiotics. Do you notice that the same thing is true for Lyme disease? Once it gets into the nervous system, it can't be treated. Let's keep reading here. During the following 24-hour extreme agitation and constant tremors required aggressive analgesia and sedation on day 3. So this is only 3 days into this. High fever, intense carotid conjunctivitis, which is where your eyes turn like bloodshot red, and swollen hyperemic lips were noted. These signs remained present for the next 6 days. A non-periodic maculopapular rash appeared over the face, neck, and upper torso, and was confirmed by skin biopsy to be erythema multiforme. A possible right coronary aneurysm was identified, and the patient received intravenous immunoglobulin infusion for a Kawasaki-like syndrome. Over the ensuing 2 days, his neurological status progressively deteriorated. On day 5, he developed decerebrate posturing, as well as a marked pharyngeal spasm. The following day, his pupils became dilated and unequal. Remember the kitten Stanley? And he presented transient hemodynamic instability. So he's basically stumbling around like a zombie. Now, they had already sedated him at this point, so I don't know how they could measure that without him walking around. But on day 7, his pupils became fixed and dilated. Priapism disappeared, and gasping movements were noted. Sedation was gradually decreased as the patient lost bulbar reflexes and progressed to a profound flaccid coma. Evoked potentials revealed abnormal conduction in the left suprabulbar tract. On day 9, 14 days after the onset of his initial symptoms, the patient presented a clinical picture compatible with brain death, was extubated, and died. So they did a skin biopsy. Cerebrospinal fluid, saliva, and tears were sent to the Animal Disease Research Institute in Ontario. Skin biopsy was positive for rabies, so it was confirmed. And molecular analysis of rabies virus isolated from the saliva revealed infection by a variant associated with the silver-haired and eastern pipestral bats. So this was a specific bat that they found this was from. Now, history revealed no travel outside of the province of Quebec. The family had spent 5 days at a cottage in a wildlife sanctuary in the Laurentian Mountains of western Quebec 4 weeks before the onset of symptoms of the patient. On the evening of their arrival, listen closely, while the patient and his younger brother were asleep in their bedroom, the parents noticed a bat flying in the kitchen and removed it promptly. That same night, a bat standing still in the bathroom scared the younger brother. The bat had difficulty flying, was easily grasped by the father and thrown out. So this place that they rented was full of bats. Subsequent recollections obtained from the parents after the confirmation of the diagnosis revealed that 3 days after this event, the patient had showed his mother a small lesion on his left upper arm with a linear aspect at its center. No further action was undertaken because the origin of the lesion was unknown at the time. Wow. Now, the clinical course of the human rabies is classically divided into 4 stages: incubation, prodrome, acute neurological phase, and coma. The length of the incubation period presumably depends on the location of the bite, the amount of the virus inoculated, and the age and immune status of the patient. The virus is believed to multiply in muscle fibers at the site of the wound, a process that is not painful and does not seem to delay wound healing. The virus then seems to bind to nictinic, whatever that is, receptors at the neuromuscular junction, acting like a neurotoxin. Before entering into the nerve endings adjacent to the site of the viral multiplication, the virus is highly sensitive to the active or passive immune response of the host. If not destroyed at the site of the infection, the neurotropic virus migrates centrally via peripheral unmyelinated nerves at a rate of estimated 10 and 400 millimeters per day. Once in the nervous tissue, the virus is protected from the immune system, making immunization inefficient. Now you know why they make you seem crazy if you tell someone you have Lyme disease. Because if you don't treat it within the first 5 to 10 days that you believe that you were infected, it will spread to your nervous system. And at that point, will be untreatable. Now, fortunately, for most people, Lyme disease does not result in sudden death like rabies does. But these two different diseases have to be related. They do almost the same thing. It's essentially a vampire. It gets into your body and it hides. It knows that the antibiotic is coming for it. And that has to be some kind of bioweapon. Now, the article goes on. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'll put a link to this for those that are interested. To say that they talked to the boy before he got super sick, and he had no recollection of the bite. And so you have to ask yourself, was he bitten in his sleep? Or maybe he was in the bathroom in the dark when he had to get up to use a restroom. They do say that this silver-haired bat has a very high incidence of rabies. This particular bat has almost a 10% rate of rabies. In other words, they collected a bunch of these bats and they found that 1 in 10 of these bats captured had this rabies in it. And they think that because the teeth of this bat are so tiny that you won't even maybe know that you were bitten. And they also suggest in here that even the fluids from this bat could be contagious. Imagine the bat was in the bathroom, landed on the door knob or, the water knob, and you go to use it, and they're saying that it could have got in through that way as well. Wow. So that's a case study on what I believe will increase in incidents as the coming weeks and days come on. Now, let's hop on onto some other things. So, up until this year, anybody questioning Trump's 5G, 6G, and beyond, said that we were crazy, right? And the right was put to sleep because they were all happy that Trump was in power, and nobody called him out on this 5G, 6G, and beyond. And remember, the fact checkers were out in full force. If you said anything negative about 5G, you were banned for making false claims, right? About the effects of 5G millimeter waves. Well, apparently, some places are rejecting 5G in their neighborhoods. Stamford, Connecticut, reject 5G agreement, citing safety worries. This may cause harm. Now, this released a couple weeks ago. Let's read. Stanford's Board of Representatives have rejected a federally regulated plan. Federally regulated plan to install 5G telecommunications infrastructure on city-owned utility poles, citing environmental health concerns. Wait, where are the fact checkers? You can't say that. 21 of the city's legislatures, 40 members on Wednesday, voted against the agreement with the nation's 2 largest wireless companies, AT&T, Verizon, despite guidance from city officials that local regulation of the matter is preempted by federal law. Under the rejected pact, Stanford would have agreed to terms to install 5G conduits known as small cells on utility poles in the municipal right-of-way. If there is the smallest of chances, even the smallest, that this may cause harm, I don't see any reason why we should be passing this forward, says this representative. Lauren Mayer, a special assistant to Mayor Carolyn Simmons, said board members were informed that they had little authority to limit 5G rollout. So, who cares what the people say? You have little authority. The Law Department presented the Board of Representatives Land Use Committee with an extensive memorandum of law explaining that municipal legislatures are without authority to legislate on issues of the alleged health risks of radio frequency regulation emitted by 5G apparatuses, as that issue is preempted by federal law. Thanks, Trump. The city has not yet determined a future course of action. So, there you go. There you go. Now, is this an isolated incident? Stamford, Connecticut. Now, this is a wealthy community. And is this an isolated incident? Well, no, it's not. But most of the protest is coming out of places like England. Here I did a simple search. Rejects 5G. Of course, the Stamford story comes up first. But there's also Forest Hills, New York, rejecting it, as well as Bracknell Forest, Sunderland, and Grange in the UK. There's also a story in here of Lavalette, New Jersey, San Diego, California, and many, many more communities rejecting 5G. So are all these communities conspiracy theorists? Obviously not. They have concerns, but they have no power because of 5G, 6G, and beyond that was signed during the lockdowns. Now, one of you left a comment, and you said that in Oregon that they had rejected 5G. So I did a search in Google. Now this is troubling. You said something to the effect in your comment that Oregonians were standing up to 5G and that there was some kind of bill that was written or being voted on. So I did a search. The search said Oregon 5G State Health Emergency Bill. And everybody knows that you could type in gibberly gobbledygook into Google and it will always give you some kind of search result, won't it? In other words, it's almost never that you get a zero search result with no results. But in this case, when asking a simple phrase, Oregon 5G State Health Emergency Bill, you get zero search results. And that's weird. Crickets. What is Google trying to hide? I mean, isn't there even one person in Oregon, one website in Oregon, who's talking about maybe proposing a state health emergency bill or talking about health or the state of Oregon or 5G? Nope, according to Google, there is not. Zero. News articles anyway. I did type on news just for fair balance to tell you what's going on. But look at this. When you go to DuckDuckGo, typed in the same phrase, and look at all the news that came up under DuckDuckGo. Now, I still couldn't find anything on any bill that was being passed or considered in Oregon about 5G, but at least I got a lot of search results. So now you're starting to see how the world's most used search engine, Google, can actually influence people's minds and control the masses. How do they do it? By omitting search results surrounding any kind of sensitive issue that they want people not to research or know about or think about. And when people can't find any information on certain topics or things, even if they exist, then it makes the rest of us look crazy, doesn't it? So, crazy times, you guys. Now, I'm going to end the show today with a funny update on the Electric Kingdom. Do you ever wonder what the true cost per gallon of an electric vehicle is? Like if you were to compare an electric vehicle to a gas vehicle in terms of the number of miles you can get, and if you were to equate that to a cost per gallon, What do you think that would be? Let me go back into the chat, see who gets the answer to this one, and I'll give you guys the answer. But go ahead and type in what you think an electric vehicle truly costs per gallon to operate. Good morning, everybody. I couldn't believe it. Now, your guess could be less than what a gallon of gas costs, or it could be more. Let's see who gets it. Good morning. Yeah, I did look up, Melissa said about West Palm Beach and Trump. There was a time when I looked onto the network maps and it appeared as though West Palm Beach had rejected 5G even after Trump had passed it as law. But now it appears as though there is 5G at West Palm Beach. I could be mistaken, but I just looked it up a couple days ago, and it is now in fact there. Now that could be a lie. It could be just a cover story. I mean, you would never know unless you were there and try to, get into the 5G network. But okay, let's look at these guesses. Okay, so one of you already read the article. I can see clearly, nailed it. $17 a gallon is what an electric car would equate to in terms of cost. Let's read through this article. Study determines the astronomical true cost of electric vehicle ownership. Wonder if were you peaking? Did you peak? Let's see here. The electric vehicle story seems to have changed lately from an expectation of rapid adoption and frantic production to a reality of cooling interest and pullbacks in investment. Well, that's what happens when bureaucrats try to artificially inflate a market, right? General Motors pushed back its EV targets and postponed its coming EV lineup in what is called an effort to ensure profitability. Ford postponed $12 billion in EV investments. Hertz is slowing electrification of its fleets. Tesla remains engaged in price war meant to entice skeptical buyers. While some data show that EV adoption is on the rise, with EV sales making up a record 7.9% total industry sales in the third quarter, consumer interest is still flagging. Polling found in May that only 67% of respondents are open to buying an EV, a significant reduction from the 86% of respondents that were open to such a purchase in 2021. Multiple hurdles need to be cleared to achieve widespread EV adoption. Why are they pushing it if nobody wants it? EV ownership equates to $17 a gallon. An October report by the Texas Public Policy Foundation found that after accounting for all of the hidden costs involved in owning an EV, that price becomes much more significant than an internal combustible engine vehicle. Foundation is a conservative think tank that, according to blah, 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 blah. The group has campaigned against green energy. Okay, so they're trying to give you the context of this company, right, that did this study. The group's report adds up the cost of government subsidies, charging equipment, added strain on the electric grid, claiming that the true cost of fueling an EV would equate to an EV owner paying $17.33 per gallon of gasoline. When ICE owners pay for a gallon of gasoline, the report says they are paying for the entire infrastructure to refine, transport, and market that gasoline. When an EV owner connects to the electric grid, how much are they paying for the extra generation, transmission, and distribution costs that they are imposing on the grid? And will those embedded costs rise over time? The report identifies 3 different areas of hidden EV ownership costs. The first deals with direct subsidies, blah, blah, blah. So there's the truth about all this. I'll put links to all this in the pinned comment, as I always do. Let's go back into the chat and see what you guys think about all this. $17 a gallon. Wow. Now, I know gas prices have fallen recently, but this is the calm before the storm. I give everybody a little bit of rest before they start sticking it to us again. That's my own personal opinion. All right. Good morning, everybody. I can't see clearly says, imagine living out in the country where is the station? How long do you have to wait to charge? What is the temperature outside? Absolutely. Especially in these colder parts of the country. In Wales, they want all towns to be 20 miles per hour. Yeah, I heard about that. Putting speed limits on some of these towns, the entire town. And of course, that's meant to make you want to buy an electric vehicle, right? Robin says, I still don't understand why people buy electric cars in the colder states. Well, I think the answer to that is because it's been artificially pushed in those states. It's, the government is trying to force people on this, so they're subsidizing, they're giving you subsidies. I mean, it looks real attractive up front. You're like, wow, the price of these electric cars is coming down. I'm going to get a rebate, blah, blah, blah. They tried the same thing with solar panels, remember? They're like, you get a rebate. But then that rebate gets eaten right up in the financing because finance companies they know how to get that money back. So they just inflate the cost of the solar panels and solar system. They get it right back, and then you're paying the interest on it over time. So the bank's loving that. So it's all big rope-a-dope. I always give you guys the example of, when I had a mortgage, I was like so proud of myself, right? Oh, I have a mortgage. Yeah, right. You end up paying for that house 2 or 3 times by the time in 30 years is up. And who can maintain that high of a payment for 30 years? Almost nobody. So what do? You refinance. Oh, I got some money out. Oh, well, you're paying for all that 2 and 3 times over. You're better off sticking it out, saving the money over 5 years, have a little discipline, save up the money, however much that is, and just buy it cash. But I wouldn't even do that because home values are overinflated. They're not worth that much. It's all inflated. And how is it that something can be sold over and over and over again for more and more and more money? That makes no sense to me either. There's something wrong with our real estate market. It's messed up. It's a big straw man. And it's meant to keep people in debt. I mean, I understand houses get upgraded and stuff, but we all know the houses that keep going for more and more value that have never had a remodel. How is that even possible? That's like a bike. Imagine going to, remember Huffy? Remember Kmart Huffy bike? Okay, imagine that your parents bought you a Huffy when you were like 5 or 8, and then the Huffy gets put in the garage. It's got scratches on it, half the paint's gone, the tires are flat. You put it in the garage, and then there's a garage sale like 10 years later, and someone comes to the garage sale and they go, I'll buy that bike for twice as much as you bought it for. And you go, okay, you're going to give me $125 for that bike that my parents only bought for $60? Okay, great. You ride the bike, the people buy the bike, they ride it for a while, they inflate the tires maybe, or they ride on flat tires. I'm trying to give you a metaphor for comparing the Huffy bike to a house, right? And then 10 years later, they're done riding the bike, and they stick it in the garage, and then they have a garage sale. 10 years later, the bike goes for $225 instead of $125. And the bike's older. It hasn't improved. Now it's got rust on it. You see the problem here with our real estate? Houses shouldn't just keep costing more and more money. Like, that's weird. It doesn't make any market sense. And I know a house is different than a bike, but it kind of isn't, right? So I don't know why I use the Huffy as an example. It's just the first thing that popped into my mind. All right. So here we are. Yeah, Titania says the banana seat on the Huffy. You remember that? Now, I was so poor back in the day that I got the hand-me-down Huffy bike from my sister. Took off the banana seat, put on a regular seat, painted the thing red instead of pink, and that's what I rode. And people are like, "That's cool. You got the bar that doesn't go." Remember the girls was had the bar that went down low, and then the boys' bike had the bar that went up top. How weird is that? Wouldn't the boys' bike, shouldn't the boys' bike have the bar that swung down so you didn't, mess up the jewels? But instead, it's like the opposite. So there you go. There's an agenda right there. How boys' bikes were constructed to basically break the jewels. It's unbelievable. I mean, when you really think about this stuff and how backwards our world is, you start realizing the true evil that's out there. So, anyway. All right. Yeah, right? I don't know when bikes change, but I don't think the same. I don't think the bikes are constructed the same. But when I was growing up, boys' bike had the bar straight across, and the girls had the dipping bar, right? But it's backwards if you think about it. It's totally backwards. And then, of course, we had the cyclists who a lot of them developed prostate cancer and all this weird stuff, suggesting that you're not supposed to be riding on some kind of hard surface, riding up your crack, right? I don't think that's probably good for your body. So there's something to that. Was never into bikes after that when I was younger. So I don't know how bikes are made now. What's going on with bikes now? Are they the same way? Or did they change the design of bikes? Now electric bikes, no one pedals anymore. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've got on a bike. Oh boy, there's not even pedals anymore. Are you serious? Wow. Now, one thing I thought was going to happen with bikes is there would be like a nice big comfortable seat that doesn't ride up the crack, right? But apparently that hasn't changed much. The seats just keep getting smaller. Pretty soon okay, I won't go there. What a world we live in, right? Oh boy. Now I did know that. I did know that bikes are way overpriced now. I'm hearing, like I've heard every so often you hear stories of people buying bikes in the thousands of dollars now. What happened to the $79 bike at Kmart on sale with the tag hanging off of it? What happened to those days? Can you even buy a bike for $79 anymore? I don't think so. Probably buy a pedal for that much. Chrissy says, thanks for the headline shows. Yeah, we try to keep a close eye on the pulse of the world, what's going on, and you can learn a lot from how they're trying to program people. All right. You think God was trying to protect me with the girl's Huffy bike? Yeah, I just painted it red. When I went off the jumps, I didn't really get it like my guy friends did, They would hit that bar, bam, when they had the guy bikes. Boy. Maybe God was trying to protect me. Walmart bikes are still pretty cheap, as people are saying. I don't know. Maybe I just never have gone into that section of the Walmart before. Maybe I should just go in and look around, do a bike check. Doesn't it feel like the world's changing around us? Like it's encroaching on us. I feel like every day the world's encroaching on us more and more. People inside my space, like things inside my space, not people, but things inside my space, Crazy. Yeah, I feel old too. I'm thinking maybe I'm just more sensitive to stuff now. I don't know. I try to maintain a positive attitude, but then all the stuff just starts piling on again, doesn't it? So, anyway, it's supposed to rain. Oh, weather update. Apparently, we're in an El Nino. So if you live in the South, like I do, December is going to be super rainy, and we're not supposed to be even getting any snow in the entire month of December, is from what they're saying. Okay, so a lot of rain and no snow because of El Nino. In fact, it's been relatively warm here. It's supposed to hit a high of somewhere in the 50s today, and at night it doesn't really dip down below the 30s, which is not typical. Usually we've already had some kind of freeze or ice storm, and that's dipped down in the 20s, and even maybe the teens for a day or two. But yeah, they're saying the El Nino year is going to cause a different kind of December, a much warmer December than usual. So that's just something to prepare for. Now that's horrible for deer hunting because the deer like to get out when it's cold. That's when they're up moving. And when it's warm, they just sleep all night or sleep all day, and then they come out at night and you never see them. So, amen. God is love. Yeah, absolutely. What else is going on, you guys? Thrift store bikes were cheap. They were. Now thrift store bikes cost as much as the brand new ones. Oh, it's vintage. Oh boy. I remember those days. You could buy a bike for $3. Now they're $70 or $80. uh yeah. 54 in Florida. Rain's coming down, starting to. I'm pretty tired too. We're out. A Huffy. I wonder if they still make those. I had to replace my hybrid 12-volt battery, cost $350. Oh boy. 50 outside Tampa right now, says Rachel. God's will, not our will. Does anyone remember the Predators? There's not even a lot of good movies out right now. I was looking through, I was like, okay, what am I going to decode next? I started watching one TV series called Beacon 23, and it had the lady from Game of Thrones in it. The lady that played Cersei in the Game of Thrones. And I thought, well, maybe this is worth watching. God, it was the most lame series I've ever watched. It was like, there's these people in space in this, they call it a beacon, and it's Beacon 23, and some kind of like station to warn people that there's a black hole nearby or something. It was just one of the lamest premises of a science fiction I've ever seen, so I had to turn that one off. But there's nothing going on. I did decode 1899. Is that the one about the ghost ship? It goes into the portal. Yeah, we decoded that right when it came out. Is there another season though? Maybe there's another season I could take a look at. Zilren wanted the banana seat so bad. Think about it. You guys, people are way more awake now, aren't they? We all know what's really going on. A banana seat? Seriously? How did our parents not see that for what it was? It's unbelievable. The programming. And now we look back at all these things that we all grew up with, and we're like, really? A banana seat? Come on. Wow. My Huffy had a sissy bar. Is that what they called it? A sissy bar? I think you're right. And the banana handbars, right? Oh my goodness. Dark on Netflix. Yeah, we decoded that one. That was, we decoded that right when it came out. There's at least a couple of videos on this channel decoding the Dark series. That was a good one. It was about time travel and nuclear and all that stuff. Schwinn's were cool. I remember the Schwinn bike store was always the most expensive store, though, right? That was like the top shelf of bikes at the time. You go into the Schwinn dealership, it was like a car dealership. There were bikes everywhere. And they had the most expensive bikes, and then they had kind of the baseline bikes. But the baseline bikes were twice as expensive as the Kmart bikes, weren't they? So I never saw the inside of a Schwinn store when I was a child. That was just out of the question. If I was lucky, it was Kmart. I remember my first job in high school at McDonald's. I always tell you guys this story. On Lodi Avenue, Lodi, California. You know that McDonald's right there, middle of town? I worked at that McDonald's. I worked there for 3 years in high school. And it's funny, when I mention this, there's always one or two people that go, I went into that McDonald's during those years. Was that you? And they'll remember me because I worked the window. Of course, I was just a young buck back then. I probably looked a lot like Max does now. He's in his 20s, but he looks like he's still in high school, my son. Very young looking son. Anyway, I tell you this story because I was making $3.25. I never in my life thought that I would get to an age where I looked back on how much I made per hour and would just be in shock. They started me at $3.15 an hour, and I think I got a 5-cent per hour raise in high school. And I would ride my bike from my high school, Lodi High School, to the McDonald's, which wasn't too far. It was down Lodi Avenue, which is a pretty busy road in Lodi, California. And I would work after school, but there were laws back then, so I could only work so long. I think it was 3-hour shift you could do during the week. And then on the weekends, we were allowed to do some hours. Anyway, I tell you this story because I was making $3.15 an hour. And I remember the first thing that I decided I wanted to buy was Oakley sunglasses and Nike Air Flight shoes. That was my life back then. Because my mom used to always buy me tracks from Kmart. And I was like, I can't do this. Because, the tracks kind of look like cool shoes, but then they would split on the side. Remember that? They would blow out on the side. And I was like, my mom's like, if you want better shoes, you got to work. So I think I was probably 15 years old when I started that job at McDonald's, and I worked for 3 years until I graduated from high school. And so it took me 2 or 3 years to save up enough money to buy a pair of Oakley sunglasses that ended up getting scratched within the first week and broken, of course. I think I paid $70 or $80 for those Oakley sunglasses, and my Nike Air Flights, which I think cost me about the same. And then finally I saved up enough to buy a bike, and it was a mountain bike, and a bike was stolen within, gosh, not too long. It was parked outside of a pizza place and I didn't put a lock on it. I came out and my bike was gone. I was so mad. Anyway, I'm sure you guys just want to hear all my dumb stories, but I just thought I would share that story with you. What's the lesson there? The lesson is the more nicer stuff you have, someone else is going to want it. So it's like crabs crawling out of a pot. You're better off going with a very basic lifestyle, minimalist lifestyle, and then you don't have to sit around worrying about how to protect all your stuff, right? I learned that lesson pretty early on in my life. But then most of the rest of the people are still fast asleep. They're into nice stuff. I'm like, you're just going to have to sit and watch that. You're going to have to pay insurance on it. You're going to worry about it getting scratched. Yeah, no. Anyway. All right, you guys. I just want to hang out for a little bit and talk with you guys. It's fun chatting with you guys and joking around and ranting a little bit in our nice little way that we rant. You know, we are blessed, aren't we? I mean, it's a blessing to be free from all the bondages of all the darkness in the world and all the commitments that the enemy thinks that we're supposed to be committed to and all the things we're supposed to care about. It's a blessing to be free from that, isn't it? Oh boy, Gloria's got me beat. $1.50 an hour at the drugstore. That's highway robbery, isn't it? It's highway robbery. $1.50 an hour. That's like working for free, right? The work environment back then was a lot of fun though. I loved that job. We would horse around. We had so much fun. If I told you the story, I can't even tell you some of the stories because some of it's PG-13. Some of the stuff we did back then at the McDonald's. You know, I did flip burgers for a while. Most of the time I worked the window, but the most fun was back there on the grill. And I still have burns on my knuckles from peeling off hamburger patties off the Teflon in 1989, 1990. Eloise says, Dairy Queen, $1.60 an hour. Oh, boy. Yeah. Oh, the 80s were awesome. The 90s were pretty awesome, too. The 90s were like one step behind the 80s. They weren't. I miss the 80s. Like, people tell me stories of the 80s. I'm like, dang it, I missed it. But the 90s were pretty good, too, But we just made the best of it with what we had in the 90s. But it was a much simpler time back then. I do remember when pagers came out, but those were just like dumb, right? Those were like for the people that wanted to look important. Some of my friends had pagers. Anyway, it's fun reminiscing with you guys. I love you, and I'll probably see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Much love.